Okay, guys, so let's start the Civil War. Lincoln has been elected, and we've had 6 states secede from the Union. We're going to talk about that secession. We're going to talk then about the limited war and the war plan, the turning points in 1863, and then Grant and Sherman with total war, bringing the war to the end. So basically, we'll do part 1 today. Then tomorrow, when we go to the library, we'll talk about some of those battles, and then you'll have a real good background for the rest. So this is the election. We've looked at this map before. As soon as Lincoln, you can see, took the North as well as California and Oregon. With 40% of the vote, he ends up with 59% of the Electoral College. These 6 states immediately secede from the Union, and the Upper South is going to wait just a little while. In the meantime, Virginia, the western part of Virginia, I think you saw that in your reading when we were talking about slave states and slavery in the South, they didn't have very many slaves, and they did not want to be part of this secession. So they are actually going to draw up a border and break off from Virginia. And this is where we get the state of West Virginia that will be accepted into the Union in 1863. So now Lincoln's got something he has to think about. Is secession constitutionally acceptable? If you go back to the compact theory, remember this is something that's been argued about originally with South Carolina and nullification and so forth. So if yes, then what do? Do you allow them to become their own country? Well, he determines that it is not constitutional. So if it isn't constitutionally acceptable, then what exactly needs to happen? Is force something that should be used to keep the Union together? So these are questions that Lincoln is agonizing. He makes his language is so beautiful. I am loath to close. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory, stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell to the chorus of the Union, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. What beautiful language. And most of Lincoln's speeches, he is known to be this amazing speechwriter, and his language is fantastically appealing. So you can see he uses all these wonderful words that touch people, and these are printed over and over again. His inaugural address, first and second, is ranked as one of the top, 2 of the top 5 that have ever been delivered. So we have got federal troops in the South, and one of the federal troops, we've got a fort called Fort Sumter, right outside of Charleston in South Carolina. Lincoln says he is not going to withdraw federal troops, and he's not going to shut down this federal fort. Well, they need provisions. So Lincoln is going to send with provisions to the fort. And when he does on January 9th, 1861, they are fired upon. The Star of the West is the name of the ship. It's fired upon, and it turns away. Well, this is technically the first shots of the war, and now Fort Sumter is going to be under fire. This is the man who was in charge of the attack on Fort Sumter, and that was General P.G.T. Beauregard. What a great Southern name that is. And they are going to fire on the fort for 2 full days, and the man who is in charge of Fort Sumter cannot hold it. Okay, this is in the portrait gallery. This is Beauregard. applies, and he cannot hold it, and Fort Sumter is going to fall. So Lincoln has looked this over, and he's looked at the Constitution, and the Constitution says the Congress shall have power to provide for calling forth militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. So he is not acknowledging the secession, but he is looking at this as an insurrection. He calls for volunteers. So this is an official call for volunteers. Secretary of War is asked to make this call, and they are asking for 75,000 volunteers to put down this insurrection. And this is the language. You can see this is published in the Harper's Weekly, which is one of the major magazines of the time. When he calls for volunteers, the other southern states say, oh, okay, you're serious now, and they secede Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, and Virginia, and join the Confederacy. So, if at first you don't secede, try again. So now you have the complete states seceding from the Union. These border states, Missouri, Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware, are slave states, and a lot of the people from those particular states are going to fight for the Confederacy, but the states themselves do not secede from the Union. So now you've got the 11 Confederate states, and this is what it's going to look like as far as the kind of the boundary for the first part of the fighting. West Virginia doesn't want to be part of it, and that's part of that movie. And the Unionists in Western Virginia organize, they get this border here, and they declare themselves to be separate from Virginia and will become a state. You can see here the slave population throughout the South. Missouri, you know, even as one of the under the Missouri Compromise coming in, didn't have a lot of slavery, but a lot of slavery in the Carolinas. You can look at Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia. Florida, although it's a Confederate state, didn't have a whole lot of slavery, enslaved people, and it's mostly East Texas. Of course, that's, if you've ever been to West Texas, you know why. Nobody wants to live in West Texas, but this kind of gives you an idea of the way of life, especially in those particular states with that heavy, over 50% population of slaves, enslaved people. These are the cotton belts. You can see that Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, the eastern part of Louisiana, up into parts of Arkansas along the river, and then you've got cotton production as well in Texas. A lot of sugar plantations in Louisiana that used slave labor. So these were the main crops and dependent upon slave labor. This shows you the percentage of slave-owning families. And you can see the original states that seceded were the states that had the heaviest percentage of enslaved people. So when you're looking at cause and effect, and this is something that, of course, in history and in AP is something that they really like you to concentrate on. Lincoln elected president is the cause of Deep South secession, which is the cause of Confederate attack on a federal fort in the South, Fort Sumter, which is a cause of Lincoln calling for troops and then that is the cause of the Upper South seceding from the Union. So, cause and effect. This is always a good thing when you're organizing your thinking, and especially if you're looking at essays down the road. So these are some questions I want you to think about. You might see them again. Did the states of the Deep South have proper justification to secede from the Union? Okay, so you can think about their reasons that we talked about previously on Road to the Civil War. Was Lincoln's call for troops constitutional? Okay, when you read that constitutional, was it an insurrection? Was it the best decision? Was there any other thing that Lincoln could have done at this point in time? Then, after Lincoln did that, did the states of the Upper South have proper justification to secede from the Union? Okay, so you've looked at the reasons for secession. You've looked at Lincoln's reasoning for not allowing secession. And that's what we'll do for today. You've got a prompt that I'd like you to look at. You're going to be writing a paragraph with context and a thesis statement, and I'll give you a real quick rundown on that. So make sure you go to the modules, and we will do the library assignment tomorrow.